With Halloween right around the corner, we're entering what many like to call spooky season. So I thought there's no better time to really stress that creative muscle in your head and make some extra spooky creations. So you guessed it, we're getting scary in here. But before we start learning how to get these spooky shots, we're gonna make this a little bit more fun. I'm going to create a hashtag on Instagram called Brady Bessette Spooky Season, so all of you can post your spooky horror films for all of us to see. So go ahead and tag that hashtag with any scary films that you make this Halloween season. So for the sake of this tutorial, Sarah and I made a scene where Sarah is just getting home late at night, just getting cozy, only to find out that she may have company. So we're gonna break this down step by step. First, we're gonna attack the camera motion, and then the framing, and then the lighting. And there's a lot of info here, so just bear with me please. It's a lot of really fun stuff we're covering here. So in scary movies, thrillers, horrors, it's very important to create a great deal of suspense between the viewer and what the viewer is watching. It always keeps them on their toes and all the more ready to be scared. So one way to do that is by utilizing slow camera movements. So the first shot I decided to do here was a rather long one-take shot. One take meaning I didn't cut, and I did that for a few different reasons. First of all, using a slow camera movement as Sarah walks through the house into the living room, we build suspense as the viewer wonders where Sarah went, anticipating what could be around the corner in the kitchen, and wondering if something is gonna pop up in the next room. Another thing you'll see here in the first part of the shot is where I actually decided to leave Sarah for a couple of seconds until we met her in the other room. By leaving your subject and going to somewhere like an empty room, or in this case the kitchen, it kind of leaves the viewer uneasy, kind of wondering where they went, if the subject is okay, and if something is gonna pop up in that empty room. Think about it. You find yourself facing a long, dark, empty hallway at night. Immediately fear sets upon you, and you start analyzing where something is going to jump out from, where someone might be hiding. We are all used to subject being in the frame or someone being in the frame. So when we leave Sarah to enter an empty room, it makes us wonder if something or someone is going to appear. And that brings me to the next technique, which is using negative space. We're also used to subjects always being put on the thirds lines, on those grids lines, to the point where it feels just natural and right for when a subject is. So when Sarah was at the freezer, I framed her really far camera right, almost on that edge of that frame line, leaving a lot of negative space in the rest of the frame. And doing that really left a welcoming amount of openness, anticipating our mysterious shadow to run by. And by leaving it framed like this, it just really felt like something belonged over in that left side of the frame because everything was so empty. So as our mysterious figure ran by, obviously, like all scary movies, Sarah is curious and needs to go check it out. So the next shot here, the shot number 2, I shot from outside of her looking out at what could be there. And I shot that from behind the bush you see. And that brings us to the next technique, which is shooting from behind something and having a foreground. When you shoot from behind anything like a bush or a couch or through a window, it gives the viewer the perspective of someone kind of watching in on our subject. It makes it feel like it's a kind of first person point of view watching our subject, and it adds to the fear factor of really being watched. And that's the look we're really going for in a lot of scary movies, horror films, thrillers, anything like that. It just adds more to the suspense factor. And let's backtrack a little bit to the shadows. Utilizing really long shadows is a great way to kind of add mystery, because you never know what is causing that shadow, who could be causing that shadow. And to achieve shadows like this, you always want to go with hard lighting and low-key lighting, because if you were to soften it or really diffuse the light, you're not going to get those strong shadows and see the outline of the figure. So before we dive into the lighting of the scene and how I lit everything, let's break down all the techniques that we just discussed. First of all, slow camera movements. By maintaining a very slow camera movement, it does a great job of building anticipation and giving the viewer time to kind of wonder what's going to happen, where things are leading, where the shot is going. So using slow camera movements are great for that. And then the next one, leaving the subject and going into something like an empty room. It causes a sense of uneasiness, wondering if the subject is okay, if something is going to pop out, or if something or someone is going to pop out in that empty room. Negative space. By using negative space in your framing, it leaves a very welcoming amount in the rest of the frame for something else to pop out or another subject or presence. Shooting from behind something. By shooting from behind things, it gives a sense of first-person point of view. Sort of like someone is kind of hiding behind something, watching your subject. It adds a sense of being watched. And then lastly, shadows. Shadows add a great sense of mystery because you can't actually see what is casting it. And again, it leaves uneasiness, wondering what it could be, what's casting that shadow. Okay, so obviously all of the monsters come out from under our bed at night. So I wanted to make this moonlit scene for that reason, but also for the reason that many horror movies and scary movies will take advantage of low-key lighting. And as we've mentioned in the past, low-key lighting often does a great job of using hard lights and also incorporating a lot of shadows, leaving a lot of places for mysterious things to hide. So keeping that in mind, I wanted to rely on just the moonlight that we are making outside of the house and not add any additional lighting inside. And doing this gives us a lot of shadows to add a lot of the suspense. So to get this look, I use 3 lights all outside, but if you don't have access to as many lights or any lights for that matter, still take advantage of any existing low-key lighting. Really find a lot of shadows and combine that with the techniques that we just talked about, and you'll still get a great product. I just, quite frankly, am a geek for lighting. So moving on, for our first light, I used an Aperture Mini 20, and I used that to punch straight through the front door where Sarah is walking in. And these lights naturally have a very cool color temperature, like 7200 degree Kelvin. So they already really emulated that cool moonlight that I was going for. And I had that on full blast because they're just not very strong lights. But I had no diffusion over that because the shears acted as enough diffusion, but also we're going for a very low-key lighting. So I wanted the lighting to be relatively harsh still to maintain all of those shadows that we're going for. And this light did a great job of silhouetting Sarah as she came into the house, as well as casting some shadows in the kitchen because I knew we were gonna pass through that later in that shot. So the second light was another one of the Aperture Mini 20, set to the same settings as the one at the door. And this one is just camera right to the next window over. And the goal of this one is to really just keep consistency of the moonlight that's gonna be coming from the outside. But also, this light is gonna do a great job of silhouetting Sarah as she walks through. And then later on in this one-take shot, when she comes back into the room, it casts a lot of really cool shadows on that back wall and her face as she walks up to the window. So for the third and final light for this first shot, I put it right outside that living room where Sarah decided to come and sit down for a second before she wanted a snack. And for that light, I put on a C-stand, just my Aperture 120D Mark II. No diffusion, just the reflector cone that came with it. And over that, since these lights are a little bit warmer, I put a CTB, color temperature blue gel, on top of that just to match the moonlight on the other side of the house. And I had this light at about probably 75% power. And again, I used no diffusion because I wanted to keep all the shadows that were coming in from the bush and the window to really rake that back wall behind her and also kind of cast some shadows across her face when she sat down. Another cool place where this light really comes into effect is passing by that first mirror behind that first wall where you kind of see the reflection of the other room. And mirrors are usually a sweet tool. Sometimes they can be bittersweet, I know, but they do a great job of adding depth to your frame or foreshadowing what's coming into the next room, or you can even put a figure in the mirror that wouldn't be seen in the normal shot. So that's a really spooky approach, but just be careful of all reflective things or mirrors because I definitely had to take some down in this shot so I wouldn't see myself. So for the second shot, which was that outdoors external shot, shooting in on Sarah as she looked out, I used a couple different lights. So the first light was one of those Aperture Mini 20s, and I had that straight up above the bush I was shooting from behind, pointing straight down. And I had that on the lowest power, and really that was just to edge the leaves and give it a moonlight look on the leaves as well, and give it some texture to our foreground. And the second light was indoors, and I forgot to get a BTS shot of it, so I'm sorry. But pretty much I had one of those Aperture Mini 20s bouncing diagonally off a white reflector card, and then kind of side lighting her face. And the goal of this light is really just to see enough of the side of her face to really be able to see the expression that she makes when she's looking at the window. And remember here, less is more because we're still going for the moonlight look, not the sunlight look. So we just need enough to bring up the exposure in our face and we're not blasting a lot of hard light on her. So lastly, the third light is my Aperture 120 with that same blue gel on it. It was at about like 10% power. And I brought up this C-stand kind of from a higher angle and just punched that right on the side of the house very lightly, as moonlight would really be cast on the side of a house. But this is really all the info I've got for you today. I know it was a lot of info, but I feel like it's a lot of fun info. So go ahead, get going on all your spooky films this month, and please don't forget to tag the hashtag Brady Bessette Spooky Season so all of us can see what you're working on. So thank you so much for sticking around today. Again, I know it was a long one, and more importantly, thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers. I can't believe, I know I've said it before, but I just can't wrap my head around the immense amount of you guys that are jumping on board with my channel. So thank you so much. From here on out, I vow to keep making plenty of great videos for you. And nonetheless, this class, consider it dismissed. Maybe next one we'll have a Halloween party. Do you guys like that? We brought like candy, you know, just like all the class. Let me know. Comments. See you guys. Have fun. Happy Halloween. A little bit early, but you know. Okay. See ya.